Parshat Kitisa, I'd like to start a new series, and that is, does an 18-year-old and a woman have to Daven Musaf or not? It divides into two. One aspect is, how do we define Musaf versus the rest of the Amidas? Why would it be different? And number two, Parshat Kitisa. So let's start with Musaf. Musaf happens to be different than the rest of the davenings. The Gemara in Brachot says that even though davenings today are time-bounded commandments, you can only daven Shachris up to a certain time, Mincha up to a certain time, and so too Ma'ariv, still, women are obligated because Rachmei Ninhu, because davening is to ask for mercy from God, and women need mercy just like men. It is so true that davening is mercy, that if you miss a davening, you should make it up. So if you missed Ma'ariv, you should make it up at Shachris. Missed Shachris, you should make it up at Mincha by virtue of saying not one but two Amidas. Comes along the Shulchan Aruch and says, Avar kol hayom v'lo yitpalel Musaf, ein la tashlumin. If you missed Musaf, you can't make it up at Ma'ariv. Explains the Tosfos. 1. There's no korbanot mentioned in all the rest of the davenings, so you can't make up the content of Musaf. And number 2, because the whole idea of Musaf is u'nishalma parim svatenu. We should say what we should have brought and sacrificed. Well, if the time of sacrifice passed, it's already Ma'ariv time. Avar zmano, batel korbano. The time has passed, it's gone. But, says the Tosfos, shart filot derachmei ninu. The rest of the davenings, be it Ma'ariv, Shachris, Mincha, they're to ask mercy. And if that's the case, so ask for 2 times mercy at Ma'ariv, no problem. But if the davening corresponds korbanot, it can only be at the time you actually bring korbanot. The main difference between Musaf and the rest of the Amidas is the rest of the Amidas have to do with asking God for mercy. Musaf has to do with saying verbally what we should have sacrificed. From this perspective, is that Musaf is totally and utterly in place of korbanot, and therefore, because of which, women might be not obligated because they're not obligated in time-bounded commandments. If it had the additional component of rachamim, they would be obligated. Thus says the responsum Hitorarut Tshuva, this is a great-grandson of the Chasam Sofer, that even though women are not obligated in Musaf in general, they are obligated in the Musaf of Rosh Hashanah. Why? Because the Musaf of Rosh Hashanah, Rachmehu Pshita Dechayavin. Rav Ovadia Yosef says, based on the same thinking, they would be obligated in Ne'ilah, because Ne'ilah, even though it's time-bounded, has in it a lot of Bakashat Rachamim, asking for mercy. The other issue is Parshat Kitisa. Right at the beginning of the Parsha, it says that every year, we had to give a machatzit shekel, a half shekel, as explains the Sefer HaChinuch, sheyeh yad kulam shaveh b'dvar hakorbanot hakrivim lifanav kol hashana b'hatmada, that in order for all the sacrifices to be bought by communal funds that all the Jewish people contributed to, and therefore each sacrifice was on behalf of all the Jewish people. In the pasuk it says, and I quote, Kol ha'over al abkudim ben 20 shana v'mala, comes along the Mishnah and says that you don't take a collateral for not giving the machatzita shekel, namely a mashkon, from nashim, avadim, and ktanim. From our perspective, women and children under the age of bar mitzvah. However, the Rishomi points out, actually, for children above the age of bar mitzvah, you do ask for the machatzita shekel, you just don't take a collateral. Male children, Shuta Parkasta de Anya, written by one of the most important rabbis in Romania, until Romania was no more, Rav David Sperber. His years 1875 to 1962, he made Aliyah towards the end of his life. He says, before age of bar mitzvah, you don't even ask for it. From the age of bar mitzvah, you ask for the machatzita shekel, but you don't take a collateral if he doesn't give the money. But after the age of 20, you take a collateral. What about women? As funny as it sounds, even though the Mishnah said explicitly of Alon Nashim, comes along Dagot Maimonides, quoted by the Magen Avraham, and says that women are obligated. And he says, V'lo yadati minalan hai. I have no idea where he got this from. To make a long story short, lahalacha, we have 3 opinions. Opinion number 1, the Shayarei Korban. This is like the Rashi and the Tosfot on the Yerushalmi. The Shayarei Korban is like the Tosfot, written by the same person, Rav David Frankel, 1707 to 1762. He writes that at the end of the day, we ask for the money from everyone above the age of bar mitzvah. We just don't take a collateral from women and from children. So even though the Gemara talked about children above bar mitzvah, it means women too. Women were part of giving the machatzita shekel. From this perspective, they were part of the communal sacrifices. That's what the Shut Beit Sha'arim agrees with, written by Rav Amram Blum, 1834 to 1907, the Talmud of the Chasam Sofer family. He comes along and says that the Magen Avram, the name of the Hagaot Maimonides, is correct. The Gemara talked about Ktanim, but it means women too. Everyone they spoke about. The second opinion is the Ramban and the Rambam. The Rambam says explicitly, like the Mishnah, women do not give machatzita shekel. Kids above the age of bar mitzvah do. And that's the opinion of the Ramban. So why did the pasuk say only from the age of 20? Comes along the Ramban and explains that's only to get the kapara, because kids up to the age of 20 don't have the same level of responsibility upon their sins in the Beit Din Shel Mala. But the actual obligation is upon them, like they're obligated to keep Shabbos and Yom Tov and every other mitzvah. The Tosfos Yom Tov explains a little differently. He says the age 20 thing was only in the desert when they gave the half shekel to build the Mishkan, specifically the Adanim for the Mishkan. But for all generations, the machatzita shekel for the korbanot, everyone above the age of bar mitzvah was obligated. And the third opinion is Rav Ovadia Mebar Tanura. He says, Pshat, the pasuk, kids above the age of 13 till the age of 20 don't give machatzita shekel. This is also the opinion of the Rokeach, and this is also the opinion of Rav Yisrael Mishkalov in the name of his great Rebbe, the Gra. Namely, take the pasuk verbatim, it's up to the age of 20. Rav Yitzchak Elchanan Spector adds in maybe a Kohen doesn't have to give machatzita shekel, as don't Leviim, and definitely not kids from 13 up to 20. That's the opinion of the Beit Yitzchak, Rav Yitzchak Shmelkis, who wrote the first tshuva about electricity. And ultimately, the Torah Tmima explains, just like the pasuk says, up to the age of 20. La halacha, the Ramah says that the zeichel machatzita shekel that you give before Purim is only upon males above the age of 20. And the Mishnah Berurah comes along and says, no, the Tosfos Yom Tov, together with the Rambam and the Ramban, said anyone above bar mitzvah. So, this would have a ramification on our question. If women are not obligated in Musaf because it doesn't have the component of Rachamim, plus they didn't even have a part in Musaf because they didn't give machatzita shekel, the communal funds upon which you took the money for the Musaf, they didn't contribute to, then maybe they're not obligated in davening Musaf. With regard to kids above the age of 13 to the age of 20, machlokes, maybe they too are not obligated to daven Musaf. Not because of the Rachamim thing, they're obligated in time-bounded commandments, but male children who didn't give machatzita shekel maybe wouldn't be obligated in Musaf, which is totally and utterly in place of korbanot. That being the case, we have our work cut out for us. We have to see if indeed the common custom that everyone davens Musaf, just like Shachris, is it correct or not?
Shai me kaddish shai shvi lo misbei sang di mit vecho o ya me kaddish shai me kaddish shai shvi lo misbei sang di mit